One effect we want to apply to our scene to help drive focus through the scene or viewer attention is depth of field. It's a technique pioneered by Walt Disney back in the 1940s, and he'd set it up actually using real cameras so you could actually blur things further away and have things in focus and change that over time if you wanted. Anime Studio Pro does that too, but there's a couple ways to pull off that trick, and I want to go over that because we really haven't dealt with that in our series so far. So let's explain the true depth of field, talk about why it's cool, and then come back into our scene here and talk about why I'm actually going to do something a little bit different to carry out the same effect. Go ahead and open up the DOF right here, .anime, depth of field.anime. I have a simple scene here. Circle, square, triangles, pretty obvious. They are all on the same plane. And to show you what's going on, let me go ahead and divide our screen here real quickly. And I'll choose the Workspace Orbit tool. I'm simply going to click in here so we can see what's going on. This will be important for setting up or visualizing what is actually going on in our scene. I'll click and drag through here and move that over to the left a little bit. The first thing we need to do to engage depth of field is to actually come over to File, Project Settings. This opens up and we have a depth of field option which I'll turn on here. It gives us a focus distance away from where that's taking place, and we've got a way to visualize that, so don't worry about it too much. The focus range, and then how much blur we want. I also want to enable sort layers by depth and sort layers by true distance. There's some cool tricks we'll take a look at that we also haven't seen right here. In our scene, in the orbit scene right now, we see this little box. This is your depth of field. Everything inside of this box is going to be in focus, everything outside is going to be out of focus, and that's where the blur settings and everything come in. It requires you to actually have true depth to your scene to work. So I would need to push some of these back in space. For example, the triangle right now, it looks like it's on top because it was the last one drawn, so it is. But if I come to the layers section right here, we know we can move layers left and right, and we see this update here. However, if you hold down the Option or Alt key, depending on your system, and there is no other way to do that, and then you click and drag, we see the triangle going back in space, and we see it update in our orbital view right here. Now here's one of the little tricks. Let me undo that. If you hold down the Option Alt key and then the Shift key and do the same thing and push back, what the program does for you is it automatically scales the object so that it looks the same relative to your scene. Now if I grab the next layer and say, let's go ahead and work with the square, and I just hold the Option Alt key and push it back so it's a little further back. We can see here that, yep, it's a little bit further back there. It's just on the border right here of the focus. And if we go ahead now and do a render, we see now that the thing furthest away is blurring, but everything within that focus box is staying in focus. Well, how does that play into what we're doing in our scene? Everything is constructed virtually on the same layer, and I'm just using a stacking order to put one thing in front of another. And this is why I'm going to do it differently than what we just demonstrated. If I was going to move the camera through the scene or out the window or something like that, I would use that real depth of field ability that we have right here because you can move the camera through 3D space. Since we've already done the camera animation, we know that we actually do move the camera forward and back a little bit. What I don't want to do is have to deal with this range of focus right here. I want more control than that for our specific scene. So the way I'm going to fake that, come all the way back to frame 1 here. And for this building that's behind the scene, let's go ahead and track that down. That's going to be across street. And I'll double click on that and open up the layer settings. I'm going to enable animated layer effects, and I'm going to blur this something like about 6, not a whole lot. I might want to go up to 10 or something like that, and choose apply. When we render our scene right now and do a preview, we see the building back behind blurring, and let me move this out of the way. Everything in the room is more in focus. That's perfect. So what I will do instead here, let me get rid of this, is with animated layer effects on, let's advance down our timeline a little bit. We get our camera animation. It focuses on the clock. But then between here and about here, I want outside to come into focus. As soon as we get to about right here, I want that to change. Let me set this up at 11 seconds. I'll leave that at 6 and click apply, which should set a scene keyframe in there for that. Again, thanks to this little bug, I can't explore these options over here like you can on the PC. There's a little fix for a Retina display, but that will be corrected soon. And let me move this out a little bit. And now what I'll do is say blur radius 0 and choose apply. So let's see, when we do a render right here, our building's in focus, and then we just have to invert this process for the wall. So the wall becomes blurry then, and our character, and then we go ahead and have a crisp view outside. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and finish that off for the other layers, but there is the logic behind working with the ability to animate layer effects versus working with depth of field.